After over 25 years of marriage, my wife Annie decided she was done. She revealed her plans to leave me for someone she claimed was her soulmate, a man who filled the gaps I apparently couldn't bridge. This conversation wasn't a discussion. It was a declaration made as she sat alone with a glass of wine, her voice hardening with each word. The news hit me during an ordinary afternoon. I had just returned from work, and instead of a greeting, I was met with her ultimatum. The familiar kitchen where we had shared countless meals echoed with her escalating tones. But her words seemed distant, losing their edge as I grappled with the sudden shift in our life's narrative. Our story wasn't unusual. High school sweethearts, married young, a daughter soon after. We played by the rules we had set for ourselves. Our life was a series of well-tread paths, steady jobs, a mortgage paid off, vacations with our daughter Sally, moments of affection that kept the mundane at bay. I believed in our enduring connection, envisioned us growing old together. Yet as Annie raged about her newfound happiness, my focus waned. Her insistence on finalizing our separation with signed papers felt like a bad dream. The vibrancy of our life together dimmed as I sat, stunned into silence by the weight of her words. The true impact of her departure was felt not just by me but also by Sally. Returning home from university one evening, she found me unresponsive, slumped at the kitchen table with divorce papers strewn about. The scene was grim, papers demanding signatures, an open wine bottle, a solitary glass, and me, lost to the world. Sally's panic was palpable as she tried to rouse me, her voice trembling with urgency. The strong father she remembered, who attended every school event and encouraged her musical aspirations, now seemed a shell of his former self. Her 16th birthday present to me, a violin, a symbol of our bond, felt like a relic of a happier past. As the ambulance whisked me away, Sally was left to piece together the fragments of our fractured family. The divorce papers revealed little about the reasons, but spoke volumes about the impact. With her mother gone, Sally stepped into a role she never expected, notifying family and handling the situation with a maturity beyond her years. In the hospital, surrounded by the sterile clarity of beeping machines, I had time to reflect on the ruins of my marriage. The support of my family flowed in, their presence a reminder of the life that awaited beyond the hospital walls. Sally, ever my anchor, stayed by my side, her future in music a testament to our shared legacy. As I recovered, so too did my resolve. Annie's departure, though painful, opened new doors. I rediscovered my own strengths, engaged more deeply with my passions, and appreciated the unwavering support of those who truly valued me. Life, as I learned, doesn't always follow the script we write. It's filled with unexpected edits, revisions, and sometimes painful rewrites. But in every ending, there's also a beginning, a chance to craft a new narrative filled with hope, resilience, and renewed purpose. At the hospital, the situation escalated as family members converged, concerned for Dad's well-being. Aunt Rhonda was fuming, her face a portrait of anger mixed with disbelief, as I relayed the day's harrowing events. The story of Mom's abrupt departure with her younger lover, Paul, left everyone in shock. I had just ended a heated call with Mom, where her indifferent tone and justifications for her actions deepened my resolve to stand by Dad. She attempted to normalize the situation, claiming she had found true happiness with Paul and that it was her right to pursue it, regardless of the consequences. Her lack of empathy for the chaos she left behind was astonishing. Aunt Rhonda, gripping my arm, asked urgently, "Sally, do you have the documents that woman left for Arthur?" Her voice trembled with rage. I nodded, pulling the stack of papers from my bag. As we pored over the divorce papers together, the reality of Mom's betrayal became even more stark. The documents were a cold end to what had been my family's foundation. "Unbelievable," Aunt Rhonda muttered as she read the details of the divorce, her eyes scanning the pages faster than her brain seemed to process the information. "She's leaving him for a boy toy and expects Arthur to just sign away everything they built together?" Meanwhile, Dad was under observation in a ward, the doctors monitoring him closely for any signs of a stroke or serious neurological damage. His physical state was stable, but mentally he was shattered. The nurses updated me periodically, their faces somber, understanding the family crisis unfolding. Rhonda and I discussed our next steps. We need to protect Arthur from any further harm, she declared, standing up decisively. This isn't just about a failed marriage. It's about ensuring he isn't exploited during his recovery. Her protectiveness over Dad was fierce, mirroring the strength he had always shown us. As we spoke, Mom's attempts to reach out continued. Her calls grew frantic, each ignored ring echoing the desperation she now felt. It was clear she was trying to control the narrative, likely feeling her plans slipping away as Dad's condition brought unforeseen complications to her swift exit. Rhonda's husband, Uncle Mike, joined us shortly after, bringing with him a family lawyer to discuss the legal implications of the divorce papers. We'll need to contest these terms, the lawyer advised after reviewing the documents. She may not have anticipated a legal battle, but she's going to get one. The hospital's sterile hallways became a makeshift conference room as we strategized. The lawyer took notes, promising to gather more information and prepare for a response that would shield Dad from any undue pressure during his recovery. In the midst of this, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of betrayal, not just towards Mom, but also towards the life I thought we had. The fabric of our family was tearing, threads pulled apart by selfish choices. Yet in this moment of turmoil, the family rallied together, each member drawing closer to protect one of their own. Later that evening, as I sat beside Dad's hospital bed, his hand in mine, the weight of the day settled around us. The beeping of the machines provided a steady backdrop to my swirling thoughts. Dad's face, usually so full of life and laughter, was pale and drawn. But in his eyes, I saw a flicker of the man who had raised me, the strength that had defined him all these years. "I'm here, Dad," I whispered, squeezing his hand. "We're all here. You're not going through this alone." As night crept over the city, the hospital room held a silent vigil. Family members came and went, each leaving a piece of strength for Dad to draw upon. The battle ahead would be tough, with legal and emotional challenges, but with the family's unity, we had a fighting chance to navigate through the storm stirred up by Mom's departure. In every crisis, there is an opportunity to reaffirm bonds, to stand together against adversity, and to emerge stronger. As I watched over Dad, I knew this. Whatever came next, we would face it as a family, undivided. The situation at the hospital stabilized somewhat, but the turmoil outside continued unabated. While Dad slowly began showing signs of recovery, the battle with my mother escalated. Her recent actions were desperate and erratic, indicating a disconcerting blend of greed and detachment from reality. Rhonda, always sharp and ready, was managing the legal defenses like a seasoned general. Her office had become a war room of sorts, papers and legal documents scattered across every surface, each piece representing a battle to be fought in the larger war of the divorce. Tina, who had become an unexpected ally in these trying times, was deeply involved too. Her gratitude towards Dad for his support during her own divorce had evolved into a steadfast loyalty. Together with Rhonda, she was more than just supportive. She was proactive, a needed force in the complex legal and emotional melee our family was navigating. One afternoon, as the autumn sun cast long shadows across the hospital room, Tina shared more about her background with me. "Your father was more than just a colleague," she explained, her voice tinged with emotion. "He was a friend who stood by me when I felt most vulnerable. It's only right I do the same for him now." As Tina spoke, Dad seemed to stir slightly, as if recognizing the presence of an old friend. It was a small sign, but for me, it was a glimmer of hope that he was still with us, fighting to come back. The latest issue at hand was the absurd letter Mom had sent to Tina, demanding half of Dad's past bonuses, an impossible request since those funds had been used long ago for family expenses and investments. It was clear Mom and her new partner were scrambling for any financial advantage they could exploit. "This is more than just financial overreach. It's harassment," Rhonda said, her tone icy as she discussed the letter with Tina. They were both incensed by the audacity of the demands, which seemed designed to cause maximum stress and disruption. I couldn't help but agree. The more I learned of Mom's actions, the more disillusioned I became. The mother I remembered, who took me to my first music lesson, who soothed my fears on stormy nights, seemed like a mirage now, replaced by this stranger driven by selfish motives. The legal strategy was set. Rhonda would file for a formal separation of assets, preventing Mom from laying claim to any more of Dad's earnings or savings. This move would safeguard whatever financial security Dad could have post-recovery, ensuring that the fallout from the divorce didn't strip him of everything he had worked so hard for. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the regular visits from family, friends, and colleagues seemed to buoy Dad's spirits. Though still not fully responsive, he was visibly more present, his moments of awareness growing day by day. Tina's visits were especially heartening. She brought laughter and stories from the office, reminding Dad of the world waiting for him outside the hospital walls. Her warmth seemed to reach him, offering a respite from the sterile hospital environment and the cold battle being waged in courtrooms and lawyers' offices. About 2 weeks into Dad's hospital stay, something shifted. Perhaps it was the cumulative effect of the medication, the constant care, or the love and support he felt. But Dad began to regain his strength. He started to speak, at first only a few words, but soon more fluently. Each word he uttered felt like a victory. "It's like I've been away," he joked one morning, his voice still weak but clear. "What did I miss?" "The usual soap opera drama, but with legal jargon," I quipped, relief flooding through me. His smile, though slight, was the most genuine thing I had seen in weeks. As Dad's condition improved, so did our hopes for a resolution. The legal proceedings were gearing up, and with Rhonda at the helm, we felt prepared for whatever might come. We knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but with Dad's recovery, the strength of our family and friends, and the right legal strategies in place, we were ready to face them together. The unity and resolve of our family had been tested by this ordeal, but it had also brought us closer. We were not just surviving the storm, we were learning how to navigate it, strengthened by our bonds and our collective resolve to protect our own. As the conversation in the hospital room continued, the pieces of my traumatic experience and its impact began to coalesce into a clearer picture. The psychologist's analysis offered a chilling insight into the psychological shock that might have triggered my unresponsive state, drawing a parallel to a distant, yet evidently still influential, childhood trauma. Rhonda, who knew about my past with the neighborhood bully, added her perspective to the conversation, suggesting that the emotional scars from those early days could have resurfaced upon encountering such betrayal and confrontation from Annie. "Arthur was always resilient, but even the strongest walls have their weak points," she remarked thoughtfully. The room was silent for a moment as everyone processed the weight of the situation. Sally, who had been my steadfast supporter throughout this ordeal, took my hand, her presence a comforting constant amid the turmoil. "It's just so unfair, Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "You didn't deserve any of this." Tina, who had stayed back from the office to support us, then spoke up. "Arthur, the way you handled my own messy divorce, giving me support without judgment, it's one of the reasons I'm here today. You showed me compassion when I needed it most. It's time for us to return that favor." As we talked, doctors intermittently entered to check on my physical state, ensuring that my recovery was on track. They performed routine checks and confirmed that physically I was slowly but surely regaining strength. However, the emotional and psychological healing was just beginning. The psychologist suggested regular sessions to help process the betrayal and its severe psychological impact. "It's going to be a journey, Arthur, but you're not alone in this," he assured me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Later that day, as Tina prepared to finally head back to the office, she hesitated at the door, turning back to me with a hopeful look. "Arthur, if you need anything, anything at all, please let me know. And when you're feeling up to it, maybe we could have coffee just to talk outside these hospital walls." I nodded, grateful for her offer and the unexpected friendship that was strengthening through this crisis. "I'd like that, Tina. Thank you." After Tina's departure, Sally, Rhonda, and I spent the next few hours discussing the legal and financial steps we needed to take next. Rhonda had been meticulously freezing assets and handling the legalities of the divorce, ensuring that my interests were protected. "We've got a solid case, Arthur, and with everything documented, including her infidelity and financial demands, we're in a strong position to counter any of her claims." As evening approached, Sally brought up a topic that we had skirted around all day. "Dad, what are you going to do about Mom? I mean, after all this is over? I sighed, the weight of her question heavy in the air. I don't know, Sally. Right now, I just need to focus on getting better, both physically and emotionally. The rest will come in time. Rhonda chimed in, always practical. We'll take it one step at a time, Arthur. Let's focus on your recovery and the immediate legal battles. The rest, like whether to reconcile or completely sever ties with Annie, can be decided when you're fully back on your feet. The conversation helped clear the air and reaffirm the support system I had in my daughter and Rhonda. I was starting to realize that while the road to recovery might be long and fraught with challenges, I wasn't walking it alone. That night, as Sally and Rhonda left the room to grab some dinner from the hospital cafeteria, I lay back on my pillow, the events of the past weeks replaying in my mind. Despite the chaos, betrayal, and pain, there was a strange sense of clarity. The ordeal had stripped away illusions, revealing the true colors of people I thought I knew and highlighting the genuine affection and loyalty of others. As difficult as it was, this revelation was the first step toward rebuilding, a slow, painstaking process, but one that I was now ready to begin. The revelation of Annie's arrest brought a mix of relief and trepidation. As Rhonda detailed the charges, I felt a heavy knot in my stomach. The notion of Annie being legally reprimanded for her actions was justified, yet the reality of seeing someone I had shared nearly a quarter century with facing criminal charges was daunting. Arthur, the charges are serious, but they reflect the severity of what happened, Rhonda explained, her voice firm yet empathetic. Mental cruelty in the context of your condition at that time is not taken lightly by the law, and her leaving you unattended only worsened her case. Sally, who had been a rock throughout this ordeal, seemed conflicted. I never wanted it to come to this, Dad, but Mom's actions, she left us no choice. We need to ensure she can't hurt anyone else the way she hurt you. Tina, who had quietly supported me since my hospital stay, added, It's about protection, Arthur. Not just for you, but for anyone who might be vulnerable in such situations. What she did was not just a betrayal of a marriage, but a disregard for basic human decency. The legal proceedings were set in motion, and as the days passed, the reality of our new normal began to settle in. Detective Hill had been thorough in her investigation, gathering statements and evidence that painted a clear picture of the events leading up to my hospitalization. Her professionalism and dedication were a beacon of hope in the convoluted mess that had become my life. Meanwhile, life at home was slowly adjusting to a rhythm, punctuated by visits from Tina and Rhonda, who made sure I was not only coping with my recovery, but also preparing for the impending court date. Sally spent as much time as she could with me, her support unwavering. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, just Sally, Tina, and me, Tina broached a subject that had been unspoken, but was surely on all our minds. Arthur, once all this is over, what are you thinking about the future? Her question hung in the air, heavy with implications. I pondered for a moment, my fork paused midair. I honestly don't know, Tina. This whole ordeal has been so draining. I think once the legal matters are settled, I'll need some time to find myself again, to figure out who Arthur is without Annie. Tina nodded understandingly. And we'll be here for you, no matter what you need or decide, she assured me with a warm smile that did more for my spirits than anything else could. The court date arrived sooner than I was mentally prepared for. The morning of Rhonda was at my side, her presence a calming force as we entered the courtroom. The room was stark, the air thick with anticipation. Annie was already there, looking more fragile and alone than I had ever seen her. It stirred a complex mix of emotions in me, pity, sorrow, but also a resolute need for justice. As the proceedings began, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on me. I listened to the charges being read aloud, each word a stark reminder of the pain and betrayal I had endured. When it was time for me to testify, Rhonda's reassuring glance gave me the strength to speak my truth, to recount the events that had led to my current state. The judge listened intently, her gaze shifting thoughtfully between me, Annie, and the attorneys as testimonies filled the room. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally spoke, her voice resolute. Given the evidence presented and the seriousness of the charges, I am ruling in favor of the prosecution Annie, you are found guilty of mental cruelty and negligence. The court orders you to undergo psychological evaluation and mandates structured visitation with your family under supervision. The finality of the judge's words echoed in the courtroom. As we left, the weight of the past months seemed to lift slightly, giving way to a tentative sense of closure. Back at home, surrounded by Sally, Rhonda, and Tina, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Their unwavering support had been my anchor through the storm. "It's over," Sally whispered, squeezing my hand. "Yes, but it's also a new beginning," I replied, my voice steady with newfound resolve. "A chance to rebuild, to forge a path forward on my own terms. And with all of you by my side, I think I'm ready to start that journey." As the weeks rolled by, the anticipation of the divorce proceedings and my burgeoning relationship with Tina shaped a new chapter in my life. Each day brought its own set of challenges and joys, but the support from those around me provided a stable foundation on which I could begin to rebuild. Back at work, the atmosphere was subtly changing. The dynamics between Tina and me were evolving from professional to personal, a transition that did not go unnoticed by our colleagues. Their knowing smiles and occasional teasing remarks were taken in good stride. It seemed my happiness was a welcome sight after the tumultuous period I had endured. The workplace was abuzz, not just with routine financial dealings, but also with the quiet support for the new turn my life was taking. Tina, ever the professional, managed to keep our growing relationship from affecting our work. Still, our lunch breaks often included long walks, where conversations about life and dreams for the future became common. Meanwhile, Rhonda was meticulously handling the divorce. Her strategy was clear: streamline the process, minimize the damage, and ensure a fair settlement. The extortion and mental cruelty charges against Annie added a layer of complexity to the proceedings, but Rhonda navigated these challenges with precision and resolve. One afternoon, as Tina and I returned from one such lunch, Rhonda called me into her office with an update. "Arthur, the divorce papers are ready for your review. We've negotiated a settlement that I believe is more than fair under the circumstances." As I sat down to look over the documents, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The end of my marriage to Annie, underscored by the crisp legal language of the divorce papers, was a stark reminder of everything that had transpired. It was an ending, but also, importantly, a beginning. "Once this is signed, it's just a matter of waiting for the court's approval," Rhonda explained, handing me a pen. I signed, feeling the finality of the act. "Thank you, Rhonda, for everything," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You're welcome, Arthur. You deserve a fresh start, and I'm here to make sure you get it," she replied with a reassuring smile. The following Friday night marked another date with Tina. Our relationship had deepened over the months. Our connection, undeniable. We chose a quaint Italian restaurant, a place that had become our favorite. Over dinner, Tina spoke candidly. "Arthur, once this is all behind us, I hope we can start planning a future together." Her words warmed my heart. "I'd like that very much, Tina. I feel like I found something special with you, something I didn't expect to find again," I confessed, reaching across the table to hold her hand. As the finalization of the divorce approached, Sally took on the role of babysitter for Clarice, allowing Tina and me more time together. Sally's bond with Clarice grew, and it was a joy to see them together, a small new family forming around the remnants of the old. The day the divorce was finalized came sooner than expected. Rhonda's efficiency and the clear-cut case she presented left little room for contestation. Annie's legal team, perhaps realizing the futility of fighting a losing battle, had capitulated, agreeing to the terms laid out by Rhonda. That evening, Tina and I celebrated not just the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another. We went to a jazz club, a place where the music seemed to reflect the tumultuous yet hopeful journey we had both undertaken. As the band played, Tina leaned in close, her voice soft. "Here's to new beginnings, Arthur." "Yes, to new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. As we danced that night, I realized how much had changed and how much I had gained. The pain of the past was receding, making way for new possibilities. With Tina by my side and Sally and Clarice's laughter echoing in the background of my new life, I felt hopeful. The journey had been fraught with challenges, but as I looked around at the faces of those I loved and who loved me in return, I knew that every step was worth it. The future was bright, and for the first time in a long time, I was truly excited to see what it held. The resignation she must have felt at the realization that her relationship with her daughter was profoundly damaged. Annie nodded slowly, acquiescing to Sally's demand, her eyes flicking away momentarily as if gathering strength. "All right," Annie began, her voice steadier than her demeanor suggested. "I understand why you're angry, Sally. I I made choices that I thought were right for me at the time, but I see now how they've hurt you and your father." Annie's admission hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The tension at the table was palpable, and I found myself instinctively reaching out to place a comforting hand on Sally's back. Sally, however, sat rigid, her body language unwelcoming to any conciliation. "Mom, how could you think abandoning us was right?" Sally's voice was sharp, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You left Dad when he needed you most, and for what? For someone who convinced you to change everything about yourself? Even your appearance?" Annie sighed, her fingers tracing the rim of her wineglass. "Paul, he made me feel wanted, alive in ways I hadn't felt in years. I'm not blaming anyone but myself, but I got swept up in it. And yes, he liked me better, with more weight. It was part of feeling accepted for who I am, not for who I was supposed to be." "But at what cost, Mom?" Sally's question was a plea for understanding, a daughter trying to reconcile the image of the mother she once adored with the stranger before her. I watched the exchange, my heart heavy. This was the woman I had loved, the mother of my child, yet her decisions had led us down a path of pain and estrangement. It was difficult not to feel a mix of sympathy and resentment. "Annie," I interjected, my voice calm but firm, "we can acknowledge the changes you've gone through, but we also need to address the future. Tomorrow our divorce will be finalized. What are you hoping to achieve with this meeting today?" Annie paused, her gaze shifting between Sally and me. "I don't expect forgiveness, not now, maybe not ever, but I'm hoping for some form of understanding, or at least a chance to explain myself to Sally. I've lost a lot, and I'm trying to rebuild something from what's left." The conversation shifted slowly as Annie detailed her life with Paul, the challenges they faced, and her growing realization of the consequences of her choices. She spoke of regret, of lessons learned too late, and of her hopes to one day mend the bridges she had burned. Sally listened, her expression softening slightly as her mother opened up about her vulnerabilities and mistakes. It was clear that while forgiveness was far off, the door to dialogue had creaked open, allowing a sliver of light into the long, darkened room of their relationship. After Annie left, Sally and I sat in silence, each lost in thought. "Dad, do you think she's really changed?" Sally finally asked, her voice small. "I don't know, Sally. People can change, but it takes time, and it's often painful. What matters now is that we find a way to move forward, whether that includes your mom or not," I replied, squeezing her hand. As the night drew to a close and we prepared for the next day's formalities, I reflected on the profound shifts in our lives. The divorce, once a looming specter, was now a gateway to new beginnings. With Tina, I had found unexpected happiness in a partnership that promised stability and affection. With Sally, the bond had only deepened, our shared trials bringing us closer. The next day at the lawyer's office, the divorce was finalized quietly, without drama. It was an anticlimactic end to a turbulent chapter, but as I signed the papers, I felt the weight of years lift from my shoulders. Life, as it tends to do, moved on. Tina and I grew closer, exploring the depths of our relationship, while Sally, resilient as ever, continued to excel in her studies and personal growth. The pain of the past remained a part of our story, but it no longer defined us. Instead, it was a reminder of our capacity to endure, to forgive, and perhaps most importantly, to begin anew. I was finally free to begin anew. The divorce papers, signed and sealed, represented not just the end of a chapter, but also the commencement of a fresh start, a chance to rebuild my life with those who genuinely cared for me. As I sat in my living room, a sense of peace settled over me. It was early morning, and the light filtered through the windows, casting gentle patterns on the floor. I thought about the conversation with Annie the previous evening. Her words, her demeanor, and the desperation in her eyes had confirmed that the woman I once loved was indeed gone, lost to choices and influences that I could scarcely comprehend. It was a painful acknowledgement, but one that brought with it a necessary closure. Sally came downstairs, her steps hesitant. I could tell she was unsure how to approach me after the previous night's tensions. I waved her over, and she joined me on the sofa, tucking her feet under her as she had done since she was a child. "Dad, I'm sorry about last night," she started, her voice soft. "I just couldn't sit there and listen to her trying to justify everything without taking any real responsibility." "I know, Sally, and you don't have to apologize. Your feelings are valid. It's been tough on all of us," I reassured her, placing an arm around her shoulders. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of all that had happened pressing down on us. Yet there was a comfort in just being together, unspoken support flowing between us. "Dad, what are you going to do now?" Sally finally asked, breaking the silence. "I'm not entirely sure," I confessed, "but I think this is a good opportunity for me to focus on the things that truly matter. Spending time with you, perhaps traveling a bit with Tina, and just enjoying life without any more drama." Sally smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I like that. And Tina is great. I'm really happy for you too." Speaking of Tina, our relationship had blossomed beautifully over the past few months. We had found comfort and joy in each other's company, sharing many common interests and fostering a deep connection that was both exhilarating and comforting. We had plans to travel to Italy in the spring, a trip we both eagerly anticipated. The idea of exploring ancient ruins, indulging in local cuisine, and experiencing the rich culture together was thrilling. Later that day, Tina came over. Her presence was a bright spark, her smile lighting up the room. She brought with her a sense of optimism and forward-looking energy that was infectious. "Arthur, how are you feeling?" she asked as she settled next to me on the couch. "Relieved, mostly," I answered honestly. "It's like a heavy weight has been lifted." Tina nodded understandingly. "I can only imagine. But now it's all about the future. And I was thinking, why don't we start planning our trip? Italy won't know what hit it." Her laughter was music to my ears. "Yes, let's do that. I think a fresh start is exactly what we need," I agreed, feeling a surge of excitement at the prospect. We spent the afternoon discussing potential destinations within Italy, from the vineyards of Tuscany to the historical streets of Rome and the scenic Amalfi Coast. It was not just a trip. It was a symbol of new beginnings, of adventures yet to come. As the days turned into weeks, my relationship with Tina continued to grow. We were careful to maintain our professionalism at work, but outside the office we were inseparable. Sally, too, had grown fond of Tina, and seeing them together, laughing and sharing stories, filled me with immense joy. The journey from the depths of despair to the heights of happiness had been long and fraught with challenges. But as I looked at what lay ahead, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. At 48, life had given me a second chance at happiness, and I was determined to make the most of it, cherishing the people in my life who made it all worthwhile. However, over time, it became clear that Tina's intentions were purely reconciliatory. Her generosity in welcoming Annie back into our lives, despite the history, spoke volumes about her character. Tina had always possessed a deep capacity for empathy and understanding, qualities that had drawn me to her initially and deepened my love for her over the years. Life, once so fragmented and chaotic, had found a new rhythm. Annie's gradual reintegration into our lives was not without its challenges. There were moments of awkwardness and residual hurt, especially in the early days when the wounds were still fresh. But as time passed, these moments became fewer and bridges slowly mended. Keegan, ever curious and innocent, played a surprising role in smoothing over the rough patches. His straightforward acceptance of Annie, now affectionately referred to as Auntie Annie, helped break down the remaining barriers. His questions about who she was were met with simple answers, and his inclusion of her in our family gatherings as nothing less than genuine. The dinners at our house, once tense affairs, gradually became more relaxed. Conversations flowed more freely, laughter began to fill the room again, and there was a sense of healing that pervaded these meetings. Sally, whose initial reluctance had given way to a cautious acceptance, found new ground with her mother. Their coffee meetings evolved into regular outings, each session helping to stitch back the fabric of their relationship. As Sally's wedding approached, the role of mother of the bride became a poignant symbol of redemption for Annie. She was involved in every step of the planning process, her presence a constant during dress fittings, cake tastings, and venue decorations. The wedding itself was a beautiful affair, set outdoors with the fall colors, providing a stunning backdrop. Watching Annie walk Sally down the aisle, there was no denying the deep emotional significance of the moment for everyone involved. Tina, standing by my side as we watched the ceremony, squeezed my hand gently. "You did good, Arthur," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This is what forgiveness looks like." "It's more than I ever hoped for," I replied, feeling a profound sense of peace. In the years that followed, our gatherings grew to include not just family, but also friends who had become like family. Annie's presence became a regular part of these occasions, her transformation apparent to all who knew her story. The weight she had initially gained had been lost, not just in pounds, but in the burden she carried. Her smile, more frequent and genuine, spoke of a woman who had come to terms with her past and was learning to look forward to what each new day might bring. One evening, as we all gathered at our house for a summer barbecue, I took a moment to reflect on the journey. The garden was alive with the sounds of laughter and chatter, the air filled with the scent of grilled food and blooming flowers. I watched as Annie and Sally chatted animatedly with Tina, who had just brought out a tray of her homemade lemonade. It struck me then how life's most profound lessons often come dressed in pain, but lead us to paths of incredible growth and unexpected joy. Forgiveness had not come easily, nor had reconciliation, but both had arrived, bringing with them a richness that filled our lives with new meanings. As the evening drew to a close, I found myself by Tina's side, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. "Thank you," I said to her, knowing that without her strength and love, none of this would have been possible. "Thank you for being you, Arthur," she replied, her eyes reflecting the sunset, her voice a soft echo of our shared gratitude for the life we had built together. In that moment, I knew that no matter what the future held, we were ready to face it together, our family stronger and more complete than it had ever been before. Life, as unpredictable as it is, seemed to have settled into a harmonious rhythm for us. Sally's pregnancy brought a new kind of excitement, knitting the family even closer together. Tina and I, still deeply in love, balanced our professional and personal lives with a practiced ease that only years of being together could afford. As I watched Sally and Annie discuss baby names and nursery themes, I couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed over the years. Annie's transformation, from the woman who had nearly torn our family apart to one who was slowly rebuilding her relationship with her daughter, was nothing short of remarkable. Her involvement in the pregnancy was a testament to the long, arduous journey of healing and forgiveness that had taken place. Fred, Annie's new partner, was a stark contrast to Paul. Gentle and unassuming, he had brought a sense of stability and quiet joy to Annie's life that had been sorely missing. His appearance in her life had been a turning point, helping her regain her confidence and sense of self-worth. While he was much more reserved compared to the vibrant personalities of our family, his steady presence was a calming influence on Annie, and she seemed genuinely happier. The evening progressed with laughter and lighthearted teasing. Tina, ever the gracious hostess, served dessert, a homemade tiramisu that was a favorite of everyone at the table. As we indulged in the creamy, coffee-infused delicacy, the conversation turned to plans for the future. "So, when is the baby due again?" Fred asked, his tone warm and genuinely interested. "Mid-July," Sally beamed, her hand instinctively resting on her growing belly. "And believe it or not, Dad has already started baby-proofing the house." "It's never too early to start," I chimed in, earning a chuckle from the group. As the night wound down, Tina and I excused ourselves, retreating to our bedroom while the rest of the family continued chatting in the living room. Once inside, I turned to Tina, enveloping her in a tight embrace. "Thank you," I murmured into her hair. "For what?" she asked, pulling back slightly to look at me with a curious smile. "For everything, for being the glue that held me together when I was falling apart, for building a life with me, for every moment of love and laughter we share." Tina's eyes softened, her hands framing my face. Arthur, I love you more than I thought possible. You and this family are my everything. We kissed, a slow, deep connection that spoke volumes of our love and mutual respect. It was moments like these that I cherished deeply, the quiet, intimate times that strengthened our bond. Later, lying in bed, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this point. From the heartbreak and chaos of the past to the joy and fulfillment of the present, it had been a wild ride. Tina beside me, her breathing even and peaceful in sleep, represented a love rebuilt from the ashes of a former life. The future looked bright, with the arrival of our grandchild on the horizon, and our family relationship stronger and more vibrant than ever. Life had a way of coming full circle, of healing the wounds of the past and providing new opportunities for growth and happiness. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a profound gratitude for the second chance we had been given. The trials we had faced seemed like distant memories now, overshadowed by the love and joy that filled our lives. It was a reminder that no matter how difficult things might get, there is always a path forward, a path paved with forgiveness, understanding, and, most importantly, love.